here at the Leadership Institute. And welcome back if you joined us last month. And hello to all of our new viewers that are joining us for our Disruptive Leadership series. And we will make this time together interactive. So we will be using the chat as well as the Q&A. I will be pausing the speaker throughout to add in my 2 cents as well as give back any feedback that we are seeing in the chat as well as in the Q&A. If you don't feel comfortable dropping your questions and comments in the Q&A or chat, you can personally send me a message. I will have my eye on the Teams chat just in case you do. Today's webinar will be facilitated by Brian Fitzpatrick. And Brian is a Columbus, Georgia native. He is a coach, consultant, and trainer that has a passion for seeing others reach their full potential as well as building leaders. So please help me welcome Brian in the chat. I'm not going to embarrass you, Brian, by reading your full bio. So with that, I am turning it over to you.
Thank you. You know that always makes me squirm in my seat a little bit. I'm like, oh no. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Brianna. I am super pumped up to be here back with the Disruptive Leadership series again. And we're gonna not waste any time. We're gonna jump right in. Again, like Brianna said, we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please drop your questions in. She's going to be stopping me along the way to add in some commentary. So basically, we're about to tag team this thing, and we're going to hopefully give you some things around something that is near and dear to my heart, and it has to do with staying passionate about what we do. So I titled this session "How to Fall in Love with What You Do," again, because if we're honest about it, y'all listen. If we're honest about it, not just in work, but in a lot of things that we do in life, we start out like a house of fire, man. We start out pumped up. We start out, we're excited, we're energized. It has our full attention. We're devoted, we're committed to it. And like many things, the longer you do a thing, it's just a natural part of the process that it gets a little bit harder as you go to keep that same level of energy, to stay engaged, to stay locked in. And so the first thing that I just want to tell this group this morning is that you are not normal. You are like all of the rest of us. So I don't want you to come on and think that, because you may be feeling this way and once upon a time that you loved it, but now it's a little different. It takes a little bit more to get you going. Just know that you are in the company of all the rest of us, because we all experience this. I was talking to a good friend of mine on last night about this session, and he gave a really good example. And he said it's kind of like when we start out on a health journey. And so we start out and we're excited at first. We're working out, we're meal prepping, we're drinking all the water. We're doing all of the things that the doctor has told us that we need to be doing, that we probably have been procrastinating on, and we're doing it. And then a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks goes by. By the time we hit the end of that first month, we starting to think, do I really want to get up and go walk now? Oh, maybe I'll sleep in a little bit. Well, I had a really long day. I'll do it tomorrow. And then we start, our energy and our effort start to wane a little bit. And it's a natural part of the process. And so today, what I'm hoping that you gain from this is some strategies to help you to reignite your passion for what it is that you do, and to really redefine or refine how you engage in your work to make the greatest impact, right? That last part is really important to me because of this statement. If you find a job you love, it will never feel like work. Y'all, that's my grandma. Now, I don't know if she came up with this or if she heard it from somewhere else, but I remember distinctly her saying this to me, especially during my teenage years. I had expressed a desire, like a lot of teenagers, to join the world of work. I think I was 13 years old, and there was a summer youth employment program that you could sign up for, and they would give you, a place to work for 8, 9 weeks during the summer. You could make your own money, and I was pumped up, man. I was amped up about it. Well, a funny thing happened. The first job that I had, the first place that I got assigned to, my little green card had my job title on it, and it simply said laborer. Now, I didn't know what a laborer was, but I found out very quickly. Man, y'all listen, we cut grass, we cut hedges, we, we edged the sidewalk with shovels. They didn't have, it wasn't a such thing as weed eaters back then and edgers. You were the edger. It was 100%, human horsepower that made these things. And oh yeah, by the way, the location that I was assigned to took up a whole city block. And so it was constantly stuff. We cleaned up, we cleaned bathrooms, but I had so much fun because I was assigned there with a lot of my friends. And so whether y'all realize this or not, whether you're from Georgia or not, if you tuning in from somewhere else, I need to let y'all know about the summertime in Georgia. It's hot. It is hot in the summertime in Georgia. And those days where we knew it was going to be 100 degrees, that it was going to be 105 in the humidity, it made it hard. You wanted to say, yeah, I just don't have it today. But being a part of community, learning skills, and even the people that we work for, how they made the work, even though it was hard work, they still made the work fun and engaging, right? They still made sure that they told us thank you at the end of the day, see you tomorrow. It was those little bitty things that really made me love that job. And that was by far the hardest job that I've ever had. So she said, if you find a job you love, it'll never feel like work. And looking back on it now, after all of these years, I can honestly say that job, it never one day felt like work. Well, this is what Steve Jobs says about work. He says your work is going to fill a large part of your life. I think we all can agree on that. We spend a lot of time at work. And he says that the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work, right? So when we start off, we want to produce something that gets people's attention. We want to give our absolute best effort. But here's the plot twist. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. That is why this particular subject is so near and dear to my heart, because I know how important it is to really love what you do, to be passionate about what you do, to be excited about what you do, to be engaged with what you do. Because if you are, it makes those long, hot days a little bit more tolerable. It makes those times when you really don't want to get up because it's super early in the morning. It makes it a little bit easier to do. It doesn't make it perfect, but it keeps you going and it gives you strength, and it continues to motivate you. So I got to start off. I'm a definitions person, so we got to define love so that you understand what it is that we're talking about. So love, according to Merriam-Webster, is simply a strong affection for another arising out of, listen, kinship or personal ties. Now, we usually associate the word love when it comes to people, when it comes to families, when it comes to friends, and even when it comes to our coworkers. How many of you out there have ever said, the thing that I love about my job is I just love my coworkers. I love the people that I work with. We work together for so long, we become like family. And so I feel like that love is also a relationship that we have to have with the work that we do. And when we have that type of relationship with the work that we do, that's how we're going to make the greatest impact. That's how we're going to be able to day after day produce results at a high level. That's how we're going to continue to be able to do what we do in excellence. So whether you work in customer service, or whether you drive a tractor, or whether you work in an office, it all is going to require you to have a kinship and a tie to the work that you do. A fancy way of saying it now, we've seen a lot of studies, especially coming out of the pandemic. Gallup and some other organizations have done work around employee engagement. Oh, that's the HR way of saying, do you love what you do? See, they're asking employees, what is it about our environment that we can improve? Because again, we spend so much time at work. We want it to be as dynamic as we can possibly make it. And if it is, then it helps us as a company improve retention, improve employee satisfaction. But ultimately, what it helps to improve is work product. It helps to improve the work that is produced when people feel connected to their environment. I had a conversation with a friend of mine early this morning. They've been working from home since the beginning of the pandemic, and their company just made the decision for them to come back into the office 3 days a week. Now, this is a major Fortune 500 company. And what they said was, I'm not really upset about it because it would be good to be able to see some of the people on a regular basis that I work with. Yeah, we see each other on Teams and Zoom and meetings and things like that. But it probably is going to be pretty cool to actually sit next to people again, right? And so it's that personal tie. Now, they also let me know that there were some people that did not share their enthusiasm about coming back to the office. And you know what? That's an okay place to be as well. But my hopes is for that company is that they make that environment so dynamic as people come back into it, that that is the place to be. That people are saying, yeah, I can't wait to get there. Oh man, ain't that the kind of work that we all want to do, right? I can't wait to get there. I can raise my own hand and say, I've had some roles where when that alarm clock went off, I was like, man, do I even have it today? Do I even have the energy for it today? And if I'm being honest, even right now, as a coach, as a trainer, as a facilitator, I always want to bring my best energy. I want to bring my best self to whatever it is that I do. So I have to intentionally spend time to stir that love up on the inside. So that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So there's a study that says that 87% of workers surveyed attached an importance to what they do, an importance, a meaning to the workplace that they're in. So I think that we know by that most people know that having a purpose at work is a widely shared concern, especially among millennials, especially among the Gen Z generation. At the top of their list of things that they want from a workplace is, I want to feel like people care about me. I want to feel like my leader has my best interests in mind and that I have the opportunity to learn and to grow. See, all of those things help to build our relationship with work. And when we have that relationship, that connection to what we do, we actually produce better work because we begin to see ourselves. We begin to see our work not as simply something that we do for somebody else, but as something that is a representation of who we are, what we hold near and dear. Companies all over the world have corporate values, and those corporate values represent who they are. the promise that they're making to the customers that they serve. Our work represents us in the very same way. And so 87%, they attach an importance to having purpose in work. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like that's significant. Because if you find a job you love, it'll never feel like work.
And
And like
Brian, I
Steve
think
Jobs.
you brought up
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think you brought up a valid point when you are talking about the generational perspectives when it comes to having passion and purpose at work. I think it started with the millennials. You know, growing up, I'm going to throw in another saying grandma and mama used to say, if you, wake up and do something you love every day, you will never work a day in your life.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
Absolutely.
that was just, poured into me growing up. So as I entered into the workforce, I always, searched for something that would bring purpose to me. And that's why I went back to grad school. I mean, after undergrad, I wasn't finding any jobs that felt purposeful or had meaning for me. So I said, okay, let's just go back to school and continue on with my educational journey. But that was a big thing for me as a millennial, and you're seeing it even more so with our Gen Zers wanting to have that purpose at work. So I just wanted to pop in and say that, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Now when we think about our relationship to work, I want you to kind of give this some thought. What are the things that I find purpose in the work that I do right now today? So as you kind of thinking, if things come to your mind, drop those in the chat, because if you can articulate them out loud, I am a internal processor, but I believe in the power of, for lack of a better word, decrees and declarations and saying things out loud, because there is something about saying something out loud that gives it a different type of life. And so I want you to start to just think about, as we go through the next few slides, I want you to start to think about right now today, can I pinpoint something that I know this is part of purpose for me? This is part of purpose for me. And if you can think of things, drop them in the chat. I'd love to know and get you all's feedback. So let's continue to kind of talk about this relationship that we have with work. I want to drop a few nuggets on you. So first off, loving what we do, it matters because through our work, we begin to establish a major part of our identity, and we begin to live out our core values. It begins to show up in our work. If one of your core values is integrity, then guess what people can count on from you? If you happen to be a numbers person, they can count on from you that those numbers have been gathered, they have been assimilated, and they've been put together with integrity. That they know that they can count on them to be factual and true. It becomes a part of your brand. It becomes a part of that personal brand, whether we know it or not, that we all have in the work that we do. Now, the first part of this, though, it becomes a major part of our identity. So I want y'all to think about something. When we meet people, let's say we're at a networking mixer, or we're at some kind of event or gathering, and you meet somebody new, especially here in the South, right after, hi, my name is, is probably going to come, well, what is it that you do? Because we attach identity to our work. In contrast, is one of the same reasons that when people sometimes retire, they retire from one job and then they find themselves doing something else. Very similar, maybe at a lower level of responsibility, but it's because they're looking for that connection, because our identity gets attached to what it is that we do. I'll share a story with you all. because this whole thing about reclaiming our career identity is important. So after 20 plus years working in nonprofit, I transitioned out. And the one thing that I said to myself is, I'm tired. I have been doing people all these years. I'm tired. I don't want to do that kind of work anymore. I'm looking for something corporate, something I can just go, I can sit in my cubicle, I can do my thing, and that's it. I made the mistake, y'all, of having a conversation with my father. You got to meet the man. The man is like Yoda, right? He speaks in riddles and this just the whole nine. The man's like Yoda. So I'm having a conversation with him and I'm telling him this is what I think I want to do next. He's very stoic. He doesn't say anything. He says, He said, that's interesting. So you got to know my father. My father is a baby boomer that worked in a steel mill. So he's a man's man, right? And so it was all about you go to work every day and da da da. So he was already having trouble with this fact that I'm quitting a job and I ain't have no other job to go to. He was already struggling with that. I had to get that brother on board, right? But this is what he did. We have our conversation. 2 days later, he pops by the house. He said, hey, I got something for you. And he hands me this envelope. I had expressed to him, I don't want to do that kind of work anymore. And he hands me an envelope. I opened this envelope, y'all, and it was every newspaper article that I had ever been featured in for 20 plus years, working in the nonprofit organization that I worked in. He had every one of them. He had every one of them. Every magazine that I was in, he had every one of them. And he wrote a note on the outside, and it just said, before you decide, look inside. I didn't realize how profound that was and how it would literally change the direction I was going in, because if it had not been for that moment, I probably would not be doing this webinar with you all today. It helped to renew my passion, my love for serving people, for teaching, for training. And the next role that I had, guess what I was doing? I was coaching employees. All because he helped me to reclaim my own career identity. We talked about it later, and what he said was, he said, you are not what you do. He said, you're not solely what you do. He said, but it's about what you pour into what you do. See, I told y'all the man's like Yoda. And so it matters because that's how we establish identity, and that's how we begin to live out our core values, the things that are really important to us. We spend our time doing what we spend our time doing impacts us the most because it is how we release energy, skills, and time. That's how we do it. Whatever we spend our time doing the most, that is where most of all of our energy is going. That's where we're using our skills, and it's definitely where we're spending our time. That's why having a good relationship with what we do and loving what we do, that's why it matters. And then finally, when we spend increasing amounts of energy, skills, and time doing something, it's easy to use those things to establish purpose and significance in life. Brianna, back to your comment, that's really what they were trying to impress upon us. Find something that you do, that you love, and that you're passionate about, because it's going to help establish significance in your life. And a lot of times that's what we're looking for. We want to know that what we do is making a difference. I can fast forward years later, I got that corporate job. Y'all, I made it about a good year and a half, and that was it. And then I was right back in the place that I knew I was supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is perfect purpose and significance for me. Now you got to find out, and you got to ask yourself, what does that look like for you? And all of us face what I call the tipping point. From that place where we started, to that place where that energy has dropped off significantly, and we know it and acknowledge it. That's the thing about the tipping point. That's how you know that you're there, that you know it and you acknowledge it. And it kind of looks like this. So maybe you, this person right here, she's a little frazzled, but she looks like, if you look at this picture, she looks like she's simply tired. Y'all, this was me after 20-something years. This was me. I was simply tired. But if we're honest, some of us are more along the lines of this guy. We're more along the line of this guy. 14-hour workday. Stressed a little bit? Why do you ask? And it comes out in our personality. It comes out in our tone. It comes out in our demeanor. So whether we admit it or not, and that's why I say the important part of the tipping point is acknowledging that this is where we are. This is how we can begin to reclaim that passion, because we have to be honest with ourselves and first admit, this is where I'm at. I'm there. So there are some common reasons that I found that people often fall out of love with what they do. Number one, maybe they feel like there's a lack of communication. Oh, it's the same way in relationships, right? People are at odds a lot of times in friendships and other relationships simply because they're not communicating effectively with one another. They're not listening effectively to one another. Well, the same thing happens in work. How many of you, or maybe know people that have said, you know, man, the place where I work, if the communication was just better, it would be so great if the communication was just better. You have some people, they simply feel invisible. They feel like they're not seen. They feel like they're not heard. They're not understood. And in some cases that they're not even taken seriously. So they feel invisible. They don't feel like they have a voice. We're excited when we first come in because we go through new employee orientation and they fill our hearts and our minds with all the possibilities of what could be. And then we get into the day-to-day grind of the work. And we have to be honest with ourselves to say, yeah, it can weigh on us. Sometimes there are places and environments and maybe even people that kind of magnify some of the insecurities that we might be dealing with. If I'm not a very outspoken person, but I'm always in meetings and people are always asking me to stand up in front of the group and talk. But I'm not that person. See, that's an insecurity that I have that unknowingly somebody is fueling, right? And so leadership becomes even more important, especially when it comes to these three. But then, if we honest, we kind of like Snoopy sometimes. We just bored. We just bored. We have just gotten to the point, we've got it down pat. We know how to do it. We can do it with our eyes closed, and we're bored. We don't feel challenged. That's one of the reasons why we can fall out of love with what we do. Because we just don't feel like there's anything else I can do or accomplish or need to know. So the attraction is gone. Sometimes in extreme cases, trust has been broken. Maybe there was a policy that was in place that really was not adhered to. So sometimes, y'all, it could just simply be that trust can be broken, right?
And
but I
think you
love that
brought up something.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian, to jump in like that. I think you
Yeah.
brought up something very important when you talked about number 4, boredom sets in. Because as we have been going through this, for me, I was afraid that I wasn't going to get that many nuggets because I love what I do. However, I think that what you said at the beginning, even if you love what you do, you have to occasionally stir the pot, stir up that love. And I think that is how you can combat number 4. I know for me, that's how I started on my coaching journey. The attraction was gone. I felt like I wasn't helping people. I was just, nose down in policies, contracts, and budgets. And I had to ask myself, what will bring fulfillment to this job? I see Brian and I see Shayna and Dreesy doing what they love and pouring into people. And I wanted to have that same fulfillment. And that is how I started on this coaching journey. So I just wanted to add in that little nugget, Brian, that it's not always that you're not doing what you love. The attraction sometimes gets lost and boredom sets in. So I just wanted to reiterate that stirring the pot and stirring up that love within what it is that you do.
Absolutely. I think that's what I was gonna actually go back to that one. So you read my mind. See, I told you we're gonna tag team this today. You read my mind because that as soon as I said it, I was like, ooh, that's the one right there. That boredom setting, because I think we all can identify with that. We have all had times where we know there's things that we could be doing, but let's just keep it real. Let's be honest. We done kind of sat there and looked at our computers. We sat at our desk, and our mind is in a million different places. And it's simply because we've not acknowledged, wait, I'm bored. I'm bored with this. And so we have to begin to ask ourselves and give an honest assessment and say, okay, if this is what I'm feeling, why is it that I'm feeling this? Because I didn't feel this in the beginning. I didn't feel this a month ago, 6 months ago. I didn't feel this, but now that I am, what's changed? What's different? Is there something that I was doing that I'm no longer doing? Or is there something that I really need to start doing that I've been putting off? And that's gonna be the thing that's gonna ignite the fire. That's gonna be the thing that's gonna stir it up, like you just said. What is it? Because that boredom has set in. But the first place to kind of start to dig ourselves out of some of these is acknowledging that these are places where we are. If the attraction is gone, we got to acknowledge this is where I'm at. If trust has been broken, we have to acknowledge this is where I'm at. I'm feeling some kind of way because I put my faith and my trust in this process or whatever, or this person, or whatever the case is. And this is not really what I envision. And we have to acknowledge that's where we are, because that's how you can start to figure out what's the way forward from there. What's the way forward from there? So I'm glad that you brought that up, because Snoopy, when I saw this image, I said, man, that's it. But look at the question that he's asking. I wonder why I'm so bored. I wonder why. He's got his doghouse. He got everything he needs, but yet he's still asking the question, why am I so bored? So if that's you, then you can ask yourself that same question. I know I've asked myself that question multiple times in my career. Why am I feeling like this? Why? I love, like you said, I love what I do, but I think I'm a little bored. And we're gonna actually address this one in some of my 5 keys in a couple of slides. So the last two of these are: no one compromises. Compromise, I think it goes underrated sometimes, because compromise has to do with being heard. Compromise has to do with being heard. No compromise can ever happen in any area of our life unless something is heard. And when people feel like they're not being heard, they start to feel like, well, it's all one-sided. And then this dividedness starts to happen. So imagine you're on one side of the road and the work is now on the other side of the road. And there's a divide between you and it. All because the things that you think are important, or ideas or innovations that you may have, they may cut against the grain a little bit and they're not being well received. We process that as, well, they're not hearing me. They're not willing to compromise. They're not willing to find, a happy medium, some common ground, or even try anything. Because there are some people, they thrive in environments where they can create, where they can innovate, where they can express themselves and think forwardly and be 2, 3 steps ahead. They thrive in those kind of environments. And so if they get to a place in their career and on their journey and the work that they do, and they feel like they're doing the same thing repetitiously, boredom is going to set in, but it's going to be because I can't do anything different. This is we just doing the same thing over and over again. But then number 8 is it's not going well. So maybe that's the reason that I don't love it anymore. It's just I'm just not feeling it. It's not going well. Me and my boss not seeing eye to eye. Me and my coworkers are not seeing eye to eye. It is just not going well. It's not the same place that it was when I started. A lot of things have changed. The people have transitioned, and this set of coworkers that I have, they're not like the ones that were here when I started. Anything like that. But I want you to look at the image that I put in here. So this is a husband and wife. Obviously, they've been married for a long time. And this is what it says. Just because you're mad at someone doesn't mean that you stop loving them. So I want you to think about that family member that y'all, especially for those of us that have siblings, right? We know we ain't always best friends with our siblings. Sometimes we kind of, even into adulthood, you don't always see eye to eye. But me and my sister, I showed her this image and I asked her, Tanya, what do you think about this? She fell out laughing. She thought it was like, she said, that's me and you. She said, that's me and you. She said, now they probably married, probably, it kind of looks like that. She said, but that's me and you. She said, because even when you mad, you still gonna cover me. Even when you mad, I know you got my back. And because we're mad at someone or something, work, environment, the task that we have to do. If we honest, every last one of us has been asked to do something at work in our career that we did not want to do, that we dreaded doing, right? There was a report, there was something that when that time of the month came, you were like, oh man, here we go again with this. We got to do this. We got to do this again. I got to deal with them again. But just because you're mad at someone or something, it doesn't mean that you stop loving it, right? Those two things, they don't automatically go together. Okay? That making sense? Brianna, what you think about that one?
Oh, I like that. Hold on. Let me make sure y'all see me and see my reaction to this meme. I mean, I certainly do. I feel it because, like you said, there's going to be times where you have to work on that report. I mean, I think we were in a meeting the other day and Brian just felt it and saw it all on my face. I did not want to do this report, but I knew that at the end of the day, that was helping somebody. I knew that that was going to help my organization, that was going to help the program participants, and it was going to make a difference. So, I didn't stop caring for what I did. I was just dreading it.
Right, exactly. And I think that of all of these, this one for me, it really rings true because you can see it, in work because we all can identify and we all have been there, right? So how do we get back to this place where we love it again? Because we just established just because you're mad don't mean that you stop loving. So how do we get back to this place? So I got a few things that I want to share with you all really quickly. So number one, reestablish your why by writing out your accomplishments in your role and then do the math. So this is what I mean. Sometimes when we do things for a long period of time, it is very easy to forget how much we have accomplished. So I have a friend of mine who we had this conversation several years ago about a role that she was in. And she gave this a name. She called it a Be Great book. She called it a Be Great book. And I remember conversations that we would have, and she would be so excited and would tell me about something great that she had an opportunity to do, some door that had opened, a promotion, or something that she got to do that it was learned. It was something new that she had to learn, but how much she enjoyed learning how to do it. And she wrote in this book. An easy way to do it, if you don't want to create a Be Great book, is just update your resume. One of the things on resumes now that's pretty common is for you to put accomplishments or word what you did in the form of accomplishments. This one really hit home for me because I redid my resume last summer, and I sent it to one of my mentors and I said, hey, take a look at this and tell me what you think. They sent it back and said, nah, I was there. I know what you did. You need to put this and this and this and this and this in here. And so I didn't think about all of the years that I had spent writing and managing federal grants. Never gave it a second thought. It was just a task. It was something that was in the job description that I had to do. And when I went back and did the math and I looked at just what I could remember, it was a significant amount of funding that I had generated through the grant writing process. Y'all, I can't tell you how good that made me feel because I know the good work that we did in the community. And I started to think about all the people that were helped because of what I had the opportunity to do. So I would encourage you to reestablish your why by going back and start writing down those accomplishments. And then I want you to do the math by adding them up. And I want you to read through them. And I want you to remind yourself, man, I have something great to offer. That's one way to get that love stirred up again. I know it fired me up. It made me say, you know what? Okay, all right, let's go. I like this, right? The second thing is you have to relinquish the mindset that is always going to be perfect. So let's go back to our meme number 8. Just because you're mad doesn't mean that you stop loving. So we get this mindset about work that it is going to always be perfect, y'all, all the time. And that is just not the case. So we have to let go and be willing to let go of that mindset of perfection, that all of the people are going to always be perfect, that the work environment is always going to be perfect, that we're always going to have the perfect task assigned to us all the time. It doesn't really work like that. Why? Because people are involved and people are imperfect. Every last one of us. But it really is a mindset. It really is a mindset. So we have to be willing to let go of that mindset that says, if it's not perfect, then it's something wrong to the point where I don't love this anymore. I got to go do something, because that is the place where we end up, right? I had this one bad. If it wasn't perfect, I was in all types of fits. I was just like, oh man, and it just bred complaining and more complaining and procrastinating, and a lot of negative behaviors came out. But when I let this go and I realized it's never going to be perfect, but it's going to be times where I'm going to have to adjust, I'm going to have to adapt. And if I'm willing to do that, I'll grow to a point where I can push through the hard times and focus in on the times where I'm really locked in to what it is that I'm doing. All right, number 3. I love this one. Remain connected to passionate company. So let's go back to what I just said about complaining. Sometimes, y'all, when we get in complaining mode, we find people that we can complain with. And so it's very easy to find ourselves connected to a lot of people in our close circles, either at work or personally, that really don't challenge us to really unpack and analyze why we're feeling what we're feeling. But they're very good at just kind of going along with it. And so what I need you to do is kind of analyze your circle and make sure you stay connected to passionate people. Because passionate people can help you when you start to feel your passion and your energy dip, because you're going to be able to draw strength from them. Those are going to be your cheerleaders. Those are going to be your encouragers. Those are going to be your confidants. And so don't disconnect from those people because they have a positive spin. And this is what we say. I don't want to talk to them because they just think positively about everything. They like a fortune cookie. Well, in times where you're feeling like this, you need people like that in your circle. You need to be connected to people like that, because those are going to be the people to help you dig your way out. It's not a matter of skill. It's not a matter of talent. It's just a matter of what you feel toward what you do. So I found that by connecting to those people that are passionate about what they do, that it helps to re-energize me. I hope that makes sense. Brianna, what do you think about that one?
Oh yeah, that's a good one for sure. I mean, negativity breeds negativity. So, I mean, if you're only um partnering and buddying up with people who have the same angst as you, then you're gonna end up in this constant state of negativity, in this constant state of being down and not seeing the purpose of what you do. And if you get that cheerleader, oh, they're gonna make sure you constantly remember what it is that you're doing and how it's important to the overall organization, how it's important to the bigger picture. And I think that sometimes when we're down in the weeds, and we're working and our noses are just down, we forget what it is that this is affecting. How is this step that I'm doing impacting the end goal? And having that cheerleader, you're going to be able to have those conversations. But of course, if you get with negative Nancy, who you always go to lunch with, and y'all complain, and you're always again going to be in this constant state of just anxiousness and unhappiness. So I like the number 3. You really have to stay connected with those wooers, with the people who, I mean, they're Mr. and Mrs. CSU. So you have to go to those people so that they can keep you uplifted in that moment.
Right. And this is why I love the Disruptive Leadership series, because we get to talk about stuff like this, and because it's things that you don't really hear in the context of regular training and stuff like that. But these are real things that people really deal with. These are challenges that people really have. So number 4, I want to challenge you to raise your bar by learning something new. So if you feel your energy dip about what you're doing, let me ask you a question. What have you done to learn something new? One of the things that has really jump-started me in my career at different points, and I can pinpoint them almost exactly to the day, was taking on a new challenge, was broadening my horizons and challenging myself to learn something new. We talked about I'm bored because I got this down pat. I can do this in my sleep. I got it with my eyes closed. What my challenge to you is, if that's you, learn something new. Raise your own bar by learning something new. And watch your energy level and your passion and your love get stirred up. And now all of a sudden, you got that connectedness that you had lost. So raise your own bar by learning something new. And then the last one, we actually talked about it. Reclaim your career identity. You have to decide who you want to be, the person that you want to be, what your values are, what's important to you, and not allow your career path to solely dictate what those are. So when I say reclaim, you have to take hold of it. Take hold of who you are and own that. Take hold of the areas where you know you need to improve. I tell people there's a lot of psychometric assessments that you can take and all of this to identify personality traits, but you know the best assessment of you is probably going to be you, because you know you better than anybody else knows you. You know if you have a raggedy attitude. You know if you don't like to hear the word no. You know if your boss asks you to do a certain task, you're probably gonna roll your eyes. You already know. You know this stuff about yourself. And so you have to own that part and be willing to invest in yourself to get better. I tell leaders all the time, you own your career development. You own it. We put the ownership and we lay the identity at the feet of our employers, when in actuality, it's our responsibility. Their job is to make sure we understand and know how to execute our job, to provide the resources that we need to execute our job. But the growth and development, if you happen to work in a company that has training programs and does things, you're in good company, because that's not everybody. Everybody doesn't do that. Some places don't do it at all. So how are you ever going to grow? Well, it's going to require you to pick up a leadership book. It's going to require you to subscribe to a podcast. It's going to require you to challenge yourself to learn something new. And that's how you establish your career identity. So when I say reclaim it, take ownership of it, because it's yours in the first place. It's not anybody else's to do. It's your responsibility. So why is this important? Simply because leaders are three things. They're planters, they're cultivators, and they're harvesters. And then you repeat the cycle. So we plant seed. If you're a leader out there and you want to see certain behaviors in your team, start by planting those behaviors as seed. If you want to see people be punctual, start by being punctual. The old school way of saying it, lead by example. Lead by example. Then you cultivate it. So if you want to have a culture of communication, then you got to cultivate communication amongst the people on your team. You got to encourage everybody to be a confident communicator. And then you harvest those things through coaching. So through the time that you spend individually and collectively with your people, you begin to pull out their gifts, their skills, their talents, because it's about them growing, because leaders make other leaders. That's the thing. And so you have to ask yourself as a leader, what are the attributes and the things that I have that make me someone that people will want to emulate, that when they get their opportunity to lead, they can say, man, I was under this person and I gleaned this, and this, and I can transfer these things now over to what I'm doing. And then last, you got to understand the opposite. So whatever you don't raise up as a leader, you will always find yourself trying to recruit. So if you choose not to plant, to cultivate, and to harvest, then you're always going to be trying to recruit the things that you say are near and dear to you and are most important to your team, to your company, to your environment. You're going to always be trying to recruit people to fill those voids. I'm a firm believer in growing your own. I think that's how companies thrive, and that's how they establish longevity, by being willing to invest and grow their own. But I think the same thing applies to us each individually. We have to own our growth and development journey. We got to be willing to do it. And so I would take you back to our couple sitting on the park bench. Just because you're mad at someone doesn't mean that you stop loving it. All right, Brianna, that's all I have. Back to you. I can see you, but I can't hear you.
And I was just talking away. What I said was good. I lost it, y'all. But I was just saying that this was a great session to have following building your foundations. If you did not see last month's webinar, please go back and watch it. I think that if you complete that personal code of ethics activity and then rewatch this webinar recording, you are in for a good treat in connecting the dots, because loving what we do, it matters because our identities are tied to it. So doing that personal code of ethics will help you to identify what those values are for you and help you to tie it back into what you do every day. Because like Brian said, it is up to you, and you have to take the first step. So I really did enjoy this session thoroughly. As I said before, I didn't think that I would get a whole lot of inspiration and nuggets out of this, because I already love what I do. But you know, when we find ourselves getting bored, I think it's really important to go back to raise. You know, what are we? Raise the question by asking yourself, when is the last time I tried something new, or what is something else new that I can learn? I think that that question will reignite anyone who may be at that tipping point. So thank you again for your time today, Brian. If you could go to the next slide so that I can let them know what's coming up next. That is creating psychological safety in the workplace. So this is all about employee well-being. Please also leave your feedback on today's session. I know myself and Brian would greatly appreciate it. So if you could let us know how things went, or if there are some other topics that you have in mind, feel free to email us at leadershipinstitute@columbusstate.edu. If you want a copy of today's presentation and a link to the recording, please go ahead and drop your emails in the chat or in